All right. Well, I think that we've got a little bit to talk about today. Hey, I think there's maybe a little bit going on. The comments are already blowing up. We have a ton of people on board already. Let's go. Let's rock and roll. Welcome to Flamesnation Live. It's Pat Steinberg with you. I'm at the Scotiabank Saddledome right now in our broadcast studio, the Hot Stove Lounge. Just finished the big show on Sportsnet 960 The Fan. Now let's talk. What are we talking about? Well, I think that we're talking about the obvious. Let's first of all see who's first in. Ryan first in, followed by Jay, and then the comment section blowing up after that. But because there's already so many comments, I'll give Ryan the tip of the hat, and then Jay, because they got in immediately. Okay, let's do this. Let's first off tell you that Flames Nation Live brought to you each and every time by our friends at DoorDash. Hey, sign up as a first-time user at DoorDash. Use the promo code FNLiveDD. If you do that, you're going to get a percentage off your first order, and free delivery. Discount on your first order, free delivery, all by using the promo code FNLiveDD, thanks to our friends at DoorDash. So there you go. That is the big news of the last, I want to say the last, 18, 19 hours, something like that. It was last night that ESPN's Emily Kaplan came out with the news that the Flames and Vegas Golden Knights were the last two teams in on Jack Eichel. And then, as you see on your screen right there, Kevin Weeks of ESPN reporting that Tkachuk and 4 other pieces are on the table as part of the Jack Eichel sweepstakes right now. Now, that is just reporting. That is just media speculation at this point. There's nothing confirmed on that front, but these things don't get out there without there being some truth. These things don't get out there if there's no smoke to the fire. So I do believe that we are closing in on a Jack Eichel resolution. Whether or not that Jack Eichel resolution ends up being to the Calgary Flames, like that remains to be seen. But I do think that we are moving into a world where Jack Eichel will be dealt somewhere. Like, it would actually at this point be kind of surprising if it wasn't done at some point by the end of the week. Like, is it going to be tonight, or are we going to go to bed knowing where Jack Eichel's going? Maybe not. But it sure does feel like this thing is actually knocking on the door. It was Kaplan who used the term on the 1-yard line. I know that John Vogel of The Athletic says that there are, he covers the Sabres out in Buffalo. He says that there are kind of some maybe external pressures that are starting to ramp up the pressure on this one. So when I looked at that tweet from Kevin Weeks that suggested that it's Tkachuk, a former first-round pick, a future first-round pick, and 2 prospects, that seemed a little high for me. And I have been one. If you've been watching Flames Nation Live, or if you've been listening to my show on Sportsnet 960, you know that I have been very adamant that I believe getting Jack Eichel makes a lot of sense for the Flames. I've always said there has to be a deal within reason. That seems like it's right on the borderline. I don't know. I would like, if in an ideal world and in a fair world, I think that that's a deal that I don't mind the prospect of Tkachuk being involved. And I know there are a lot of people who dislike that idea. But if Tkachuk is going to be involved, then the rest of the pieces have got to come way down. I do not see the gap between Matthew Tkachuk and Jack Eichel to be 2 top-end prospects, a first-round pick, and a 4. Like, that seems like a lot to get from Tkachuk to Eichel. You know what I'm saying? And I understand how Kevin Adams and the Sabres want to play this, and I understand that they want to make sure that they get the absolute top return for their guy. I don't begrudge them for that at all. I just think that is a super steep price. And even me, the guy who said, yeah, do what it takes, even I am a little hesitant on that, because you're not getting the guy until February probably. So there's, like, you're taking a gamble to begin with, and then you're making that trade and giving up that much. So yeah, I'm hesitant, and I'm like, that seems a little too high for me. So that's me. Now, I will say that Elliot Friedman had said on Tim and Friends today that he has heard that Tkachuk is not involved in the deal. So that is also interesting to see. And that is also an interesting kind of side note to the thing. There's been differing reporting. We had Frank Saravelli, the godfather of our the big news today of the Nation Networks and Daily Faceoff being sold. Well, the godfather, Frank Saravelli, was on with me and Will today, and he said, I don't buy that we're about ready to have news. And Frank says that he's not really, he still believes that it's Vegas that is furthest down the road or down the track to getting Jack. So there's a lot of differing reporting out there. Elliott today said that, again, he's heard that it has been close. He heard that there was a deal that might have been made over the weekend, and then it got backed off on again. So we remain in this very bizarre limbo land when it comes to Jack Eichel and where he's going to go. Again, I believe this is the last thing I'll say before we get to the comments, and unfortunately, it looks like Facebook Live is going insane, so it's going to be difficult to get to all of the comments because I can't even get to all of them because we've been there's been some that have been pushed to the top and I can't access them anymore. But the last thing I'll say is that I believe the prospect of the Flames getting Jack Eichel is exciting, and I believe it is a worthy gamble to take. But I do think that this particular package that has been thrown out there, that's even a little bit too rich for my blood. And at least for people at my radio station, people that I debate with on 960, I've been the guy that has been most adamant that, yes, you got to get this done, but that still seems pretty darn steep to me. Okay. To Facebook Live we go. First of all, and again, the comment I wanted to read, it gone. It was from John. John had said, come on, Pat, tell us what you know. Here's what I can tell you that I know about the situation. I know that the Flames have been involved the entire time. I believe that from Jack Eichel going on the trade block, however long ago that was, to where we are today on November 3rd at 6:05 p.m. Mountain, I believe that the Flames have been engaged the entire time on Jack Eichel, and I believe that they have been interested the entire time. To what extent and to what they're offering, that's probably different. But I don't believe the Flames have ever been out on Jack Eichel. I believe they have been in to some extent the entire time. That's about all I know. That's about all I am, able to divulge from my knowledge at this point, because the rest is just speculation, and the rest is just heating up on social media right now. Patrick says, don't do it. Noah says, I can't stop refreshing right now. Can I give you a tip, Noah? Turn on notifications from those in the know, because I can bet you that even if it's not Elliott or Frank that ends up breaking this, they're going to retweet the person that does. So if you have notifications on from Elliott or from Saravelli, then you're probably going to be fine. Jay says, Monahan, Shillington, Coronado, and a first rounder. I'm in. I don't know. I have no idea if that gets it done for the Buffalo Sabres. And the other thing is, we don't know what Vegas is offering. We've heard that Vegas is offering Shea Theodore. That's been a name that's been thrown out there. Peyton Krebs has been thrown out there. So are the Flames willing to compete with an offer that has a potential Norris Trophy caliber guy in Theodore and a top prospect in Krebs? Is that something that Calgary is willing to be in on from trying to make it work? So that's a fair question, and that's one of the things that we need to figure out too. As we continue along on the comment sections, I'll tell you that this portion of Flames Nation Live, this segment, is brought to you by our friends at Deuce Vodka. You can catch them at and pick them up at wherever your fine liquors, your fine spirits are sold. Deuce Vodka, the Celebration Vodka. If your local liquor store does not have it in, make sure they bring it in. Thanks to our friends at Deuce Vodka for bringing us this segment of Flames Nation Live. Drew says price is too high for sure, if that is the price. Kyle says, could Buffalo send another player with Eichel? Maybe, but I don't really get the sense that Buffalo's too keen on doing that. And on top of that, it's still got to work from a salary perspective, and the Flames are already taking on $10 million of cap space. Jordan says it's a wicked trade. Kachuk's going to be overpaid next year. That's one of the interesting parts about this, is that Kachuk is a pending restricted free agent with a $9 million qualifying offer. There are questions as to whether or not he's going to be here long term. There's certainly worry that the next contract negotiation is going to be a contentious one. So, that also plays into this conversation. John says, so if the Flames get him, will they automatically not need his $10 million until he gets healthy? Well, essentially what happens is, and Pike explained this at Flamesnation yesterday, I believe, or either yesterday or early today he wrote about this. But essentially, for the Flames to acquire Eichel, they have to have the $10 million in cap space. And the cap space has to be there, and once they've cleared the cap space, then they could acquire Eichel, or if the cap space moving in a deal is enough to bring Eichel in, then they could put him on LTIR. But they cannot acquire him and then put him on LTIR and skip being cap compliant. They have to be cap compliant first, and then they'd be able to move him to LTIR. Another one from John says, hopefully they're not giving up Mangiapane. And look, it would not surprise me one bit if Buffalo is all over Andrew Mangiapane. Like, I do know that I've heard his name as a potential guy the Sabres are interested in before. I don't know if that's where it stands now, but can you blame him? The way Mangiapane's playing, his age, all that type of stuff. He's an Ontario guy. Like, I know that Flames fans love Mangiapane, but could you blame Buffalo for wanting him in a trade? You know what I'm saying? What else we got? Liam says, depends on the former first-round pick. Is it Monahan or Valimaki? Or is it Zadorov? Are the prospects Zary, Peltier, or Coronado, or basically anybody else? And those are fair questions. We don't know at this point. Ty says it's too much for an injured player. No guarantee Eichel will be healthy this season. Too much time will go by that time. And that is the other really important note here, is that they're not probably Flames, Vegas, any other team that would end up acquiring Eichel. If they acquire him now, they're not getting him until it sounds like February. It's 6 weeks until he can even start skating. And then to be cleared for contact, like, we're talking about a neck surgery. This is not minor stuff. So, yeah, I think that is something that needs to be taken into account as well. Mark asks, Pat, what do you think is fair? Well, for me, I don't think that the prospect of having Kachuk involved in a trade is unfair, but I think that the rest of the package would have to go down. Like, I can grant you that there is a gap between Eichel and Kachuk because Eichel's the center, the former second overall pick, all that type of stuff, and Kachuk's the winger. So I can grant you that you're not making that trade straight up one for one, but what gets you to even? And I think that going those four pieces is too much. If it were to be Kachuk, one of the prospects, and a first, and then something else to make the money work, okay, let's talk. But Kachuk and then all that other, yeah, that's a little, that becomes a little less interesting for me. I think it's a little bit too much of an overpay or too much to add as a premium on top of Matthew Kachuk. Drew asks, has anyone mentioned the chance of recovery versus not playing again? Well, everything that we're led to believe is that for athletes, now an NHL player has never had this artificial disc replacement, but there have been athletes, high-level athletes, professional athletes who have had it done before and have been able to come back. I believe there's been a number of them or a few of them in mixed martial arts, and the athletes have come back and been fine, but it has never been done in the NHL. I don't think there is a risk of him not playing again, but is there a risk of him not being at the same level? Well, I mean, when it's all said and done, let's say a deal gets made today and Team X acquires Jack Eichel. Well, he hasn't played going back to last season, so we're probably talking about an entire calendar year that he goes without playing. Like, that's a significant amount of time, even for a guy who just turned 25. But I don't think that there is a worry of him not playing again. Pat, what do we know about the Flames' stance on his preference of surgeries? That from Josh. Well, Emily Kaplan reported last night that whoever, Flames, Vegas, they're comfortable with Jack getting his preferred surgery. So he would get the artificial disc replacement if he was acquired by the Golden Knights or the Flames. Damien says, any idea when his surgery even is? If the trade is made, they may not even see him in a Flames jersey this season or part of next. I would imagine, Damien, that if a deal gets made, the surgery would they would light a fire under the surgery because it needs to get done. He needs to have something to fix his neck, regardless of hockey. Like right now, Jack is having quality of life issues, and it's clear that something has to be done. But because he's a pro athlete and because he's under contract to Buffalo, there are hurdles into him just going and getting it done. So I think as soon as somebody acquires him, like almost immediately within a couple of days, he'd go in for the surgery. At this point, it would actually be pretty surprising if there is any delay in that regard. Pat says, don't the Flames run the risk of breaking apart a core that's taking so long to actually start to show results? Well, that's another thing. I mean, they're off to a really good start to the season. We haven't even discussed that at this point. But at 6-1-2, the Flames are off to their best start. And, they haven't had a start this good since the 01-02 season. It's been 20 years. And so them having this strong a start and then potentially taking guys off the roster to bring in a guy that can't play for you for a while, I understand the trepidation in that respect. I'm less trepidatious about that. I'm okay with taking players off the roster and waiting for Eichel if the rest of the package makes sense. Like, if you had to take Tkachuk off this roster, but you're not giving up all the rest to bring him in, I'm okay with that if it lands you Eichel. It just, what is on top of that needs to make more sense. Alex says, do you think Tkachuk will re-sign long-term after this season or just sign the one-year QO at $9 million then walk? Well, I do think that, from a strictly business standpoint, if the Tkachuk family is not liking what they're hearing from the Flames and they feel like they deserve more, would not put it past Tkachuk at all, taking that QO and walking right to unrestricted free agency. From a business standpoint, it would make a lot of sense. I mean, that gives you all the power, and it puts you in a spot where you go out, you perform, maybe you get traded, maybe you go to unrestricted free agency and get a massive deal then. But it would not surprise me if that were to happen. I think that there is a lot to suggest that the Flames would like to avoid that happening. So before that becomes a situation, I feel like they would explore a lot of other options, like a long-term extension, like trades. But no, I don't think that's an option that's off the table at all. And I apologize if I'm not reading every comment. There is a lot of them, and so I'm trying to go through as many as I can. This from Travis: we took forever to build a good farm. Why sell it off? Good grief. Fair enough, and I understand those who are thinking that way. This from Robert: from what you've heard from your sources around the Flames, is the week's rumored package accurate, or have you heard different names involved in an Eichel package? Well, Friedman says that he's heard that Tkachuk's not part of it, and Elliott is pretty, he's pretty bang on in these things. So, and I'm not saying that Kevin Weeks is wrong, but from what some of the things that I've heard, I have not heard a lot of Tkachuk. I have heard a lot of Buffalo being interested in Mangiapane. I've heard a lot of the Flames being interested in moving Monahan out. I have not heard a lot of Tkachuk myself. I haven't had anything confirmed or denied today, mainly because I was doing the show and this thing was all playing out in the middle of the show. I have not seen Elliott on Tim and Friends today, but apparently he did shoot down or say that he has not heard that Matthew Tkachuk is part of the roster or part of a trade, part of a package, and he says that his sources have denied that. So that is another important piece. Again, I think if you're Buffalo, wanting Tkachuk as part of this makes sense. Problem is, if that's the case, it has to be a much smaller package on top of it. If you're the Flames, I understand why Monahan makes a lot of sense. And if you're the Sabres, I understand why you're like, okay, well, we'll take Monahan, but you better have a whole lot more on top of it because Monahan, right now, there's some worry about it being some damaged goods and that type of stuff. Blaine asks, what do you think the conditions would be on any first-round picks that are sent out? Well, that's another thing. Is Buffalo willing to take conditions? If you're the Flames, you sure would like conditions like, yeah, it's a first-round pick if Eichel is this, this, or this, but if he's not, well, it's not a first-round pick. That would make a ton of sense. I mean, I don't know if Buffalo's interested in that, though. Eric says, too much risk, IMO. This is not McDavid, Matthews, McKinnon, Kane caliber player with too much at stake. I'm more concerned now that Tkachuk might not want to be here and wants out. Eric, the only thing I would dispute there is I do think Jack Eichel is of that caliber. I think Jack is an elite center iceman. He had 78 points in 68 games before the shutdown in 1920. He had 82 points in, I think, 76 games the year before. Like, this guy over an 82 game season is a 85 to 90 point player. Like, those guys are not easy to come by. So I do think Eichel belongs in the conversation with the elite players when healthy. Part of the problem right now is that he's not healthy and he needs the surgery, and that is obviously a big part of the conversation. What else we got? Jordan says, I love Matthew, but he is not a $10 million per season player, so trading isn't a bad idea. Kyle says, if Eichel comes here, do you think that lowers Johnny's asking price and make him more willing to not leave? Well, I still think Johnny wants to stay, but I do think if you were to make that type of deal, I do think that it could be persuasive to keep Gaudreau here for sure. John says, I doubt Buffalo would put in a clause surrounding Jack. They don't believe in that surgery, period. That's very true. It's very clear they don't believe in the surgery. And Travis says, if you had to choose between players on the farm, who are you willing to let go and who would you keep? Well, the guy that I'd really want to keep is Coronado. I'm a big fan of that player. I really am. I mean, this guy, from a prospect standpoint, Coronado's got the highest ceiling that the Flames have had in the organization since they drafted Matthew Tkachuk. So I would really, really want to try and keep and hold on to Coronado and not have him part of an Eichel deal. Otherwise, like, I like Zary, I like Pelche. They would not be untouchable for me. I don't think there would be an untouchable player myself, but definitely I would put Coronado ahead of Zary and Pelche on the untouchable list. Jackie says, I'm going to cry if we lose Tkachuk. And I know there's a lot of people, Jackie, who are kind of that same opinion. There's a lot of people who do not want to see Matthew leave. And you know, there's a lot of people who pointed at Matthew as the next captain of this team. Blaine says, does the deal work if they swap Monahan for Tkachuk? It does. It would make it a whole lot more sensible for me. I just don't know if that'll get it done for Buffalo. I really don't. Friends, that was awesome. Great stuff. Eric, about a three-way. Eric says, what about some kind of three-way trade? Maybe. That's something that I've heard, like, speculated on before, not necessarily from NHL sources or anything like that. I just have seen people speculate, well, what about this? What if you get Team 3 involved and then go down that way? I don't know. I mean, it could be a way. And Seth says, do you think Eichel would want to be here? Yes. I believe Eichel would like to be anywhere that is not Western New York. I think he, I don't know. Like, if you were to put Vegas, Calgary in front of him, I don't know which one he would choose. He doesn't really get to choose. Because he has no trade protection. But yeah, I do think he would like to come to Calgary. I think anywhere that is not Buffalo, he's going to look at as a fresh start. I really do. And on top of that, he's tight with Hanifin. He's tight with Gaudreau. I think that would also add to it as well. Terrence, first overall draft pick, a healthy Taylor Hall was traded for Adam Larson. Well known, he wanted to be traded. Following year, he won the league MVP. That was. I think, Terrence, that Kevin Adams would do anything not to make a trade that is similar to the Taylor Hall trade, because that remained an awful, awful move by the Edmonton Oilers. Chris says, what about Yuso as part of the package? He's been a healthy scratch the last couple of games, untouchable a few years ago. I do think there's a possibility that if you're talking about who that future first-round pick would be, I think that there's a decent chance, not that future, that former first-round pick, rather, there's a decent chance that that might be Valimaki, because I do think he would be a guy that could be part of the package. Hell, he was part of the package, or rumored package, for Mark Stone going back to trade deadline 2019, a little more than 2 years ago. That didn't end up getting done, and instead he went to Vegas instead of Calgary. He went from Ottawa to Vegas. Jackie asks, how long do you think this deal takes to get done? My feel now, just knowing everything that's out there, Jackie, is that we're probably talking about end of the week is when a deal ends up happening. I think that we're probably talking about now this week. It's the closest I've felt to it getting done. I still think there's a lot of things that need to be finagled between Buffalo and whoever they finalize with, but it feels like we're now kind of like 48 hours away, 24, 72, somewhere in that range. So there you go. That was fun, friends. That was one topic that we touched on the entire time. Unfortunately, we can't go forever. And if I did not get to your comment, I apologize. There were a lot of them. There were like 40 of them from the very beginning that I could not get to at the top because they disappeared off the Facebook Live. We don't usually have that happen, but this is a pretty big topic. We'll be back later on this week. And we'll definitely be updating the situation at flamesnation.ca. Flames Nation Live is brought to you by DoorDash. Use the promo code FNLiveDD. Get a discount off your first order and free delivery. Make sure flamesnation.ca for all of your updated news, breaking news, and the latest on the Flames, Jack Eichel, and more. Big show tomorrow. I can bet you we'll be all over it again from 2 till 6 with Will Nault and myself. And then the Flames play the Dallas Stars on Thursday night as well. Be well, everyone. Stay safe. And here's hoping to Jack Eichel news one way or the other in the next little while so that maybe this saga can finally come to an end. Thank you so much. We'll be back later on this week, probably Friday night, with Pike and I on Flames Nation Live, brought to you by DoorDash. Be well, everyone.